we are starting a new unit of Tanya study. We're even at the second book of this 5-book volume. So this is very exciting. So let's say we became a Beinoni. And the Beinoni, to give a little quick recap, is somebody who has mastered their behavior. They've mastered self-control or impulse control, and they're able to completely always be acting in alignment with the mitzvahs, with Torah, with God, with purpose, with good, all the things on the good side. And so now we learned about the Beinoni not being a perfect emotional being. They're always going to have challenge, and they're always going to have a temptation to not be perfect. Yet the Beinoni is somebody who's always got it under control. So let's say we're in a new unit. So let's say we've become a Beinoni. Now what happens then? So Liat we were talking about the other week when we were talking about something coming close to this. I don't know if you remember, but you said, like, what's the point?
Still asking.
And you're asking it for a very good reason, because that is naturally what the Alter Rebbe is expecting us to get to, this emotional place that we get to once we've arrived, or once we imagine arriving. It's like, okay, then what? I will always be spinning the same wheel. I'm not going to be a tzaddik. I'm not going to get anywhere. I'm not going to be a tzaddik and master this, ever. I'm always going to be struggling. I'm always going to be doing the same thing, whether it's about that struggle or whether it's about a different struggle. It's always going to be a struggle.
But isn't that what a mitzvah is about? Isn't that what Torah is about? Like, we don't read the 5 scrolls and say, okay, we've done this, right? Every day you have fresh challenge. Every day you have fresh misunderstanding. And it's the doing, right? It's the action of trying to refine. I mean, for me, I don't know. I got too much Rasha. There's no way. I mean, forget it. I mean, it's an aspiration, right? Yeah. But it's about the journey.
But you
Yeah.
don't feel it tiring?
Yeah.
It is so tiring for me.
Could you just explain what is exhausting?
Like trying all the time, and then you get another lesson and go out of that lesson, and then try to think positive all the time and have faith all the time. Like, just let us live. I don't want to survive. I want to live.
But it's not about okay, I understand. It's overwhelming but maybe you're putting, your expectation is that, okay, I want to arrive. I want to be a Beinoni. But remember, this whole book is about, the book is not for the Rasha or for the
I want to
Tzaddik.
live, that's it.
Yeah.
Without all the life lessons and the triggers. I mean, I'm 37. I had enough life triggers. Enough. That's it. Don't try me anymore. I learned my lesson. I know how to handle it. I can handle the pain. I can handle the struggle. But I'm tired all the time to just think how to think positive, or another struggle coming or another trigger is okay, what do I have to learn from it? I don't want to learn anymore. I learned. That's it. Let me live.
The Alter Rebbe is saying that's valid. He's expecting us to come to that place. It's almost like the Beinoni's midlife crisis. It's like, I've done it all. Now what? So the answer lies in the very first word of the chapter. Vihine, l'tosefet beor tevat la'asoto. Right? Let us elucidate still further the term la'asoto, that you may do it. So this is one word of the sentence of the title page. Ki karo ve'lecha hadavar me'od beficha u'bilvavcha la'asoto. In English, because this matter, it's a quote from the Torah, where it tells us, Moses is telling the Jewish people his parting speech, very long speech, and one sentence of the speech, he's saying this matter of Torah observance and coming close to God, all of that is very close to you, in your mind and in your heart, that you may do it. So this is the sentence of the Tanya. This is the thesis, the abstract of the Tanya. And we've had chapters focusing on different parts of the sentence and explaining how this is possible. The main question we had when we started out studying was, how is this close to you? This does not seem close. To have a love of God, mind and heart that you make, that's not close, that's hard. So we learned about how we have an innate love that we can spark when we think of ourselves in we know we have it when we're in a spiritual life and death situation. We know we've got that. We know it gets kicked in. We learned about accessing it that way. We learned about how you can meditate in your mind and in your heart and create this love. It's a little bit harder. It's the long, short way. But you can do it. And if you can't do it in full-fledged, passionate emotion, you can get the tavuna, the appreciation, the cognitive appreciation of what you're doing. That's good enough. So we know we can do that. We learned about that in previous chapters of Tanya. But what the Alter Rebbe is saying today in this chapter is the point of the matter is la, and the last word, la asoto, that you may do it, which is what Susan was saying in the action. So I'm going to ask a question. We were talking a little bit yesterday about life and death. So where is the soul closer, feeling more spiritual? Where is the soul closer to God? In lifetime or afterlife? If we can just think about that. And
I think in afterlife you're closer, but here you have more faith. Like you depend on it.
Interesting. So in the afterlife, it's clear to you, and it's like you said, you were saying easier.
In the spiritual realm, you don't have emotion, you don't have triggers, you don't have what we need to deal with here. Versus here, like the more struggle you have, or if you grew up in a religious house, you just have so much faith that make you so close to God, regardless if you are religious or no. Like even people that meditate, I can tell you when I meditate, I can sit for hours and I feel the closest to God or the universe, whatever you want to call it. But I have so much inner peace, and the minute I remove it, I'm like back to reality.
So you're saying that there's something about the human experience that is close to God.
Yeah.
So in the conventional sense, we've always been conditioned to see the afterlife as basking in the glory. I mean, it's true. After our soul is not constrained by a body, and it gets to bask in its natural habitat, closer, spiritual. But I think we've all experienced life to know that there's something about life that is, in a way, closer to God, which is basically what the Tanya is about to tell us today, and it's going to show us how. So maybe that's part of it. Yes.
Belonging.
There's a lot. I mean, that's not so much in the longing isn't talked about as much in this chapter, but it is talked about when we analyze different types of love and different types of fear. There's the love of longing. There's the love of closeness. So that's definitely there. I lost my train of thought.
In this chapter, you were saying.
Yes, in this chapter, no, wasn't that?
I have a question.
Closer to God.
I think, I would think it's easier after you're not in this form. I find this form so distracting.
Correct. Yes, and that's the conventional thought. It's true. It's true that there is an aspect, and again, I always make a disclaimer when we're studying Tanya, it's a lot of nuance. We're going to talk about the value of this, and we're going to talk about the value of that. So the value of afterlife is that the soul isn't constrained anymore. It's free to be itself. We talk about who am I? What is my existence? How am I defined? My body, or my ego, or is it my spiritual soul? Well, we talk so much about how our true identity is our spiritual soul. Well, afterlife,
You don't get to work on it afterlife, though, guys.
So that's where we're headed.
That's the thing. That's serious material. So
I'm getting there.
That's the value of the being, right?
Correct.
You don't need to work on it then, because there is no lower emotions, dense emotions. They are not exist.
I don't know, but I kind of
I'm
think it's a
telling you.
stunted way of being in compared to what we have here.
It does not exist.
Because we have the
What does
quest.
it mean stunted?
It like, you don't, there is no,
No good.
but
growth.
no, but the good is to be God's angel, but it's not, you don't, I mean, if you're lucky enough, but that is not, it's not, right? There's no quest, there's no There's no, whoops, oh God, I can't believe I did that. Stop blaming and shaming, just do different. You know, that kind of stuff.
Everything's so beautiful and so much unconditional love and
You can still have that unconditional
So the
love
question
for
that we're
yourself
coming
right
to-
now.
of course, but me personally, right? I prefer to have the good emotion, the love, the peace, which I still have it. I do have it here. And there you just don't feel all the triggers and the ego trying to jump and save you and survive, and you don't have that.
And that's exactly
So
where
me personally, again, if you prefer triggers, go ahead with that. I prefer beautiful life, peaceful, unconditional love, light. That's what I prefer.
and you have that on this earth
I
too,
do
right?
have it.
So even you are saying, you were the one who said that somehow we feel more faith here on earth. So we're kind of agreeing that there's something about life.
How
And this is
long
what I was
it
going to
takes
say.
you to
Woo,
have
came
that
back.
faith?
And there you go.
Yeah, it got right back because we came full
Yeah.
circle. So what I was going to say is that we have, and I've said this before, we have a Jewish value. We all wear chai necklaces. We know that life is valuable. We know inherently through, I think, our nature, through our spirituality, through our conditioning, hopefully, if we have our parents are giving us the love of life and why they brought us onto this earth and why we don't want to leave this earth. We want to live. We know there's something valuable about life, why we grieve after somebody
Yes.
dear to us has passed away. We know inherently that there's something extremely precious about life. And what is it? So we started to touch upon it a little bit, and the Alter Rebbe is going to take us there. And he's going to say, the same reason why life is so difficult is why it's so valuable. So, okay. So our soul,
Can you say to him the same reason
yes,
why life
the
is
same reason
difficult?
why life is so difficult is why it's so valuable. Now, is it difficult for our soul after life? We're going to bring it full circle. It's not. What's harder for the soul? To be constrained in a body or to be free? Obviously, to be free. So, why did God put us in bodies to then spin our wheels with daily triggers? Why did He do that? He didn't do that so that we would keep. He didn't do that because it's never ending. Right? He did it because in our struggle, we are affecting huge, huge accomplishment.
And suffering also refines you in a way. It's hard, it's horrible, but
That's
it
chapter
refines
26.
you. Yeah.
That's chapter 26.
Yeah.
It's all about that.
Right.
Absolutely. In today's chapter,
Sorry, Raquel, could you repeat that, please? In our struggle,
We are affecting huge accomplishments.
thank you. Speaking of the recording memory.
Yeah.
So, coming back to it.
I agree with that because the more you struggle, the more you want something to hold on to like you closer to that.
So you're feeling like there's an accomplishment happening, right? Whereas when it's easy, it doesn't feel as accomplishing. It's like when you worked really hard at something and then you get it, that satisfaction is huge. Well, today we're going to take it even a step beyond that. It's connected, this idea of accomplishment, but today we're going to take it a step beyond what we even feel. Whether we feel accomplished, whether we don't feel accomplished, whether we are in flow, whether we're not in flow. And taking it back to that soul, right? It's easier for the soul to be in heaven, not constrained. For some reason, the soul is put in a body where its voice gets drowned out by the noise of our ego and the noise of our animal soul and everything that it wants. And our animal soul is louder.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason for that is brought in the middle of this chapter is very important. It's a very important study and learning of this chapter is that the animal, it's not an even battle. In earlier chapters, we've been told that there's this war of the small city, and our body is the small city, and the animal soul and the godly soul are warring and fighting, and who's going to be the one to cause, which Which soul is the body going to express through its thought, speech, and action? It's not even, because the way through to the body is through the animal soul. The animal soul has more control over the body. Because think about it, our animal soul is all about survival. Our animal soul is all about, its drive is to keep the body alive, to keep it healthy, to keep it functioning, flourishing, enjoying. That's its job. So the soul does not have direct access to our body. It must go through the animal soul, which makes it so difficult for the soul. It's so drowned out. It has to be listened to and paid attention to, and for it to get its goal accomplished. So back to that question before, what the soul feels connected more. It's going to enjoy itself more outside of the constraints of the body. It's going to feel, that's where its natural habitat, that's where it gets heard, that's where its voice is prioritized. It's amongst friends, right? The soul is our conscious, right? It's the part of ourselves that is conscious to God. Which part of us is aware of the spiritual element of the world? Our godly soul. Which part of us can appreciate Hashem, talking about Hashem, connecting to Hashem? Our soul. Which part of us wants to be close to Hashem? Our soul. Yet, if that's the case, why didn't God just give it direct access to the body? If the point of the matter is to listen to our soul, then why is it going through the animal soul? Why are we even on earth? Why can't we just be, if the point of our existence is to be a soul, then why aren't we souls? Why are we souls and bodies?
We're here to make the world better, the material world as well.
Mm-hmm.
We can't do that.
So in the next chapter, we're going to talk about the world. Okay? We're leading up to that, and that's going to blow our minds.
About yourself now.
Yes, today we're talking more about ourselves, but it's interconnected, but we just can't do it all at once. So in this chapter, so I'm leading up to the idea of bittul. Bittul means nullification, nothingness. Levatel in Hebrew. Levatel means to nullify. Like if you have a transaction and you want to go, undo it, you want to levatel, right? So, in Yiddish, to Yiddishize, the word of levatel is bittul. And if somebody is bittul, they're buttul, right, in the past tense, right? They are nullified. If something is, but like, how do you say it in Hebrew? If something is nullified, like past tense? Canceled, yes. Well, maybe in Hebrew, but in Yiddish it wouldn't translate. Yeah, because the Yiddish would, that's right. So that's why it's important. There's a little bit of a different connotation that the Yiddish grabs onto. Okay, and we're about to talk about
Are
it.
you saying that we need the embodiment so as not to be cancelled?
I'm not sure I understand. We need the
Like
embodiment.
the soul needs the embodiment, otherwise it would be nullified.
Yes.
That's
That
it.
is a truth, but that's not where I'm going.
Okay.
That is true. That is a truism. And I will touch upon that. So it's true that the soul, the reason why it's in a body, right, is so that it can exist, right? But the soul, so I'm leading to this idea of bittul, of nullification. Okay. So bittul in Hasidic people, the Hasidim, the great Hasidim who have studied the Alter Rebbe's teachings and the next Rebbe's teachings and the next Rebbe's teachings. Bless you. All the way into the Chabad yeshivas, right? Bittul is the ultimate. To be nullified is to make it.
Wow.
Okay. So much so that there's a joke where there's back in Russia, and two scholars are arguing. Okay, this is a joke. I'm so bittul. I'm so nullified. Right? I'm so bittul, and it was more bittul. And oh no, never mind. I got the joke wrong. It goes like this. I wish I was more buttle. I wish I was more nullified. And the other one says, you think you were more nullified? You're ahead of me. I wish I was more nullified. And there's an ignoramus right nearby listening to this conversation of these people wishing that they were more nullified. And he looks at them and he's like, you guys are nothing. Like, you guys are Torah scholars. He's like, so he like kind of says, he's like, you guys are nullified? Look at me. I'm nullified. And the scholars look at him and, who does he think he is to be nullified? So it's like, it's nullification, because without talking about that, we're not going to understand why are we going for nullification? Why? I mean, isn't it important to be something, to be seen, to be heard? Well, to be nullified, according to the Hasidus, is the goal, because to be nullified means that you're a vehicle for godliness. You're a vehicle for true existence, which we've talked about many times about true existence. Like, our ego wants us to be seen, to be felt, to be heard, to be important, but our ego actually limits us from truly being seen as our unlimited self. And our unlimited self is our godly soul is God. So to be nullified is really to be in line and aligned and a conduit for the unlimited God to flow through us. So that's why it's the goal. So now that we've established that nullification, the bittul, is a goal, let's talk about how we can get that nullification. And actually, one step before we can talk about that, what is accomplished through this nullification for being a conduit? We want to be a vessel through which God can pour his energy into through us. And that's like, our soul knows that it wants that. It's the biggest accomplishment. It's to be the purpose of creation. But yet, our soul knows it wants that. Our soul can appreciate that. It has the consciousness, it has the divine consciousness to know to want that. Does our body know to want that? No. Does our animal soul know to want that? Doesn't want that at all. It wants the opposite of that. But this is where we're going to stretch ourselves. But specifically because our soul wants that, it knows to want that, that's why it can't achieve it by itself. Specifically because our soul is conscious enough to appreciate it and want it, that's why it can't achieve it.
Right.
Now, I've said the statement, now I'm going to explain.
Not
The
achieve it
soul
alone.
loves
It
God.
cannot achieve it alone
It cannot achieve it alone
or at all.
at all, but it can through others. In other words, it can't achieve it at all alone. So, the soul is conscious of God. The soul loves God. Now think about that. If I am a soul, I love my beloved.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, I exist. Because we have a relationship. And in a relationship, there's two entities. There's the lover and the beloved. And that is correct. We are in a relationship. Our soul is in a relationship with God. And our soul loves God and God loves our soul. It's both ways. It's true. But because it's tuned into this truth, it isn't able to fully be nullified because it exists as a lover. So, if I love you, I'm here to love you. If the soul loves God, the soul is feeling itself as an existence because it feels it's self-loving. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's philosophy.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. But remember, the love of God is wonderful. but we're really trying to accomplish becoming a vessel and a conduit. We want the bittul, the ultimate goal. So how are we going to get the bittul? How is God's energy going to flow without anything in the way, without any other existence or any other force to block it, or to affect, not affect, but to get in the way? That's why our soul must influence our body. Basically, that's what has to go through our body, because our body does not feel consciousness. It does not feel love to God. Our animal soul wants the opposite. And because it doesn't feel itself loving God, it doesn't feel any connection to God, that's why it can become a vessel. It can become a vehicle, a tool. It's the true bittul.
One more time.
The reason why, okay, so what's bittul? What's more bittul? What's more nullified? Our soul, our godly soul that has consciousness of God, or the body? The body. The body is a body. It's a vehicle. It's an empty vessel. It can be used to express the animal soul, which many times it is, but it also can be used to express the godly soul. And when it's used as an expression of the godly soul, it's remember, the godly soul is God, right? So it's expressing. Yeah, I know. I'm like working through it. It's expressing what is the ultimate way it can channel God through performing a mitzvah. That's where we're going. That's where we're getting to. So this is where we're at.
So basically, it's easier to nullify the animal soul because it's just a body and it doesn't have the the connection to God. But
And it is nullified. It's just it's a blank slate.
Soul is nullified.
It's a blank slate. It can be animated by the animal soul, or it can be animated by, or it can be channeled, or the animal soul can channel the godly soul to animate it to do a mitzvah. So the godly soul must go through the animal soul, because the animal soul really is what animates.
Animate. Explain.
Yeah.
Animate.
So the animal soul is what animates the body. So the godly, we're not going to need to focus on this much more, but the godly soul must go through the animal soul to get to moving the arms and the legs physically.
And do the prayer.
And do the prayer. And
the
perform the
action.
action. Exactly. So our physical actions are what is getting the mitzvah done.
Yeah.
And the mitzvah is the will of God. But before we talk about the will of God, well, it is, okay, so let's talk about it first, but remind me to come back to the afterlife.
But
Okay.
why do we want to nullify the soul, not the animal soul, the godly soul? It's good to feel the connection to God.
We don't, and that's why we don't even try. That's why the design is that the mitzvah is performed through the animal soul. Now remember nuance, because in a few chapters we're going to talk about kavana intent behind the mitzvahs, which we need we need the godly soul for that. Mm-hmm. So we're not throwing out the godly soul. The godly soul is actually our conscious. It's the motivator to make this all happen. But with all the motivations in the world, and this is where we talked about souls after death, they're grieving their physical lifetime, because with all the emotion and with all the love and the fear and the closeness that they actually have with their source and their true existence of God, they wish they can accomplish. They wish they can be motivating to do actual action, which can only happen on earth, which can only happen with our physical bodies through our animal soul animating them, hopefully motivated by the godly soul.
So you say they mourn the animal soul after death?
Yes,
Why?
Because they can't do any more mitzvahs?
correct. And that's why when we do action,
We don't know.
well, we actually we're going to get to this in future chapters of Tanya, actually, but we have a tradition that the resurrection of the dead can really truly be understood through this idea. Why does that have to happen? Why is that important? Because of this.
This is also why we say Kaddish, because
That's
the
where it's gonna
soul of our our lost one cannot try to do anything at that point to elevate their soul.
Right.
So it's our memory of them and our beloved memory of them being beloved and being good that can only elevate them. Right?
That's exactly where I was going to mention, but thank you. And we can actually do mitzvahs in their memory. We can give tzedakah. Why are there so many Jewish synagogues and schools and whatever dedicated in memory of people? Because that's how we keep their memory alive, through mitzvahs. We doing things, actions. We can do mitzvahs and be their arms and legs too. And for real, not just in manner of speech, but we can really do that. And the Kaddish kind of embodies that in its word, and it tells that story.
But it's more powerful when it's said as a we in a congregation.
We're going to talk about the congregation today as well.
That's really important.
That's also on point. The minyan, right? The famous minyan. So, okay, before we move on. Yeah. No, go ahead.
I say it's so important to have self-awareness. Like, you can waste all your life being 60, 70, 80 and just living in your animal soul all these years, never connecting to nothing. And then when you die, you're longing to earth because you want to feel or do it all over again, right? But when you learn it early and you already accomplished to balance between both and leave both worlds to the best, that's when you say, you know what, I don't want to come back here. I did my part. That's it.
This is exactly so. And we talk about, people who are in one stage of life and they just can't wait for the next stage of life, and they're that stage and they can't wait for the next stage. So, or it's the same. I think it's very on the same spectrum, or very related to that feeling we were talking about earlier, of feeling like, why am I doing this again? These triggers. If we can tune in to the incredible, infinite, huge accomplishment of each struggle that we overcome, or each physical action of a mitzvah that we take, it's not anymore about where we are going to get, what our soul is going to achieve, what we're going to feel. Are we going to feel inspired? Are we going to feel connected? Are we going to feel in flow? Are we going to feel spiritual? These are all wonderful, higher order desires, if you can think of it that way. Yet, all those higher order desires, all those emotions won't accomplish the point of why you're here more than the actual action. So believe it or not, giving tzedakah, even if you don't want to, even with a sour face, is better than not giving it. Because, now, of course, nuance. Like, of course it's better to want to. Of course it's better to be tuned in, of course. But all of those tuning in has no bearing on whether you've done it or not. It doesn't affect the action. The action is where it's at. And that's why life is where it's at.
That's why you need a body.
That's why you need a body. And that's why we wear high necklaces. Because we know innately and intuitively that there's something infinitely valuable about physical life. And this is, the Alter Rebbe says, let this be a comfort. I don't know if I actually wrote that. I think I wish I remembered to print that page. But it's in there where the Alter Rebbe says, let that be a comfort to the Beinoni. Okay, it's not in here.
What part?
It's not printed out.
Let
It was
what
page.
Let what be a comfort?
Okay, about to say. It's the page after the first page. It's the one I didn't print. Okay, so the Alter Rebbe says, let this idea of the value of action and the value of every single mitzvah be a comfort to the Beinoni. Because whenever the Beinoni feels over it, whenever the Beinoni feels that midlife crisis of then what? That then what feeling? Or that will this ever end feeling? Or why is this never becoming easier for me feeling? Whenever we have those feelings, let the power of the action be a comfort. That when we do the act of lighting Shabbos candles or giving tzedakah, think of a mitzvah in your head. When you are performing that mitzvah, whether or not you realize it, God's infinite, deepest pnimiut haratzon, his deepest will, is being actualized. And your physical hand, or whatever part of your body that you're using, let's say your hand, is now a conduit for the Shekhinah. And next chapter, we're going to talk about what that does for the world.
Can you remind me what is Shekhinah?
That's a very important question because it's the segue to the next part of the chapter. So the Alter Rebbe says, okay, what's Shekhinah, right? This Shekhinah is a dwelling of God. It's a God's presence. So then the Alter Rebbe asks, so what do you mean? But God's obviously everywhere on this earth because it's existing, and it's not. If you said God wasn't here, that means that does the world mean there's something outside of God? So obviously, God's everywhere. So what does it mean that I'm going to bring that to Shekhinah? The Shekhinah is already here. So the Alter Rebbe says, no, but there's the Shekhinah. When we talk about the Shekhinah, God is here. But when we talk about the Shekhinah, we're talking about the part of God that we let in when we create space for him to be there, the bittul. And that's a part of God that's more easily felt. We can feel it, and you know what, and whether or not we feel it, it's a part of God that's more intentionally present. And then towards the end of the chapter, the Alter Rebbe preempts a question that some might ask with a minyan, and it quotes from the Talmud where an apostate said to one of the rabbis, I think it's Rabbi Gamliel, and he says, I'm trying to see, I printed out all the wrong things, but so it's not in here. But Rabban Gamliel, an apostate comes to Rabban Gamliel and says, so you said God's infinite, right? You said he's non-corporeal. So when you said that God rests upon a minyan of 10 men, right, or 10 people, then what you're saying that is different, God's different here than he is there. So obviously there's different gods, there's different types of resting. So there's more than one aspect of God, which means there's God's plural, God forbid. And Rabban Gamliel says, listen, we've talked about this analogy, but this is where it comes from. God's like the sun. God's light. The sun shines differently through different apertures, right? So the wind, God shines through this window, and God shines through that window, and God shines through that window, and depending on the different shapes of the windows, the shadow may look different. God's infinite in one. So knowing that God's infinite in one, God lets himself in more when we let him in more. And so there's the Shekhinah as an aspect of God that comes through the mitzvahs. And what I did print out was a whole analogy that is really quite fascinating. It doesn't, just so that we just a disclaimer that it doesn't confuse you. We've already understood the idea. Okay, so the analogy is just going to deepen, but we're not understanding now something new. It's the same idea that we've talked about, and now we're going to try to understand it through the analogy. So the analogy talks about a flame, a candle, and this is what I was talking about. I just quickly sketched. So we've got our flame. So what do you think the flame? I mean, I'm expecting you. There's many. The candle and the flame is an analogy that's used to describe many different things throughout Tanya. In the past, it's been used to describe our soul. But today, it's not going to be our soul. Today, the flame is going to be the Shekhinah. So where does the Shekhinah rest? So what I have printed out here is there's a famous verse from Kohelet, I think. Yeah, Ecclesiastes is Kohelet, right? I think so.
Yes. So are you talking about the last paragraph of the second
So
page?
it's the second page, and it says, Chacham einav berosho. It's the middle of it's the fourth line from the bottom of the second page. And for this reason, the wise man's eyes are in his head. Now, the Zohar talks about a boy who asks a question, what do you mean the wise man's eyes are in his head? Every man's eyes are in his head. Where else would their eyes be? So, the wise man's eyes are on his head, are focused on what his head represents. Why? Because the candle is so the candle and the wick is the body. The flame is the Shekhinah. So this is reviewing what we already talked about. So where is the Shekhinah resting? On the body or on the soul? On the body. The soul is not even part of this picture. The Shekhinah is on the body. But how is the body, what fuels the flame to rest on the body? What fuels the Shekhinah to rest on the body? Not the soul. Not the soul. That's a good guess, though, because that's what we would have thought. This is why this chapter is so revolutionary. It's the mitzvahs. The mitzvahs are the fuel for the body to keep housing the Shekhinah.
Can you repeat that?
Yes.
What you said,
The-
how did we get to the fuel?
The fuel, the oil.
Okay.
Yeah. So the wick. The truth is the wick would be the body, and the candle, the wax, is the mitzvah, or the oil, using an oil, because the analogy in the Tanya and in the Zohar is the fuel's oil. But whatever that fuel is, it's oil. Now oil is a little bit of a better analogy because you need to keep making sure there's more oil.
Liquid.
Yeah, you need to keep fueling the flame to be resting on the wick. Otherwise, we know what flames do. They depart. They just go up to their source, right?
So what happens
So-
to a person that is not Jewish and they don't have mitzvah? How
That is
do
a
they get
great question.
connection?
I don't know the answer because I studied it, but my feeling from what I have studied is that the non-Jews have their own mitzvahs. They have the 7 mitzvahs, right? So they have their own mission and journey that is their purpose, which is keeping them anchored. Yet the purpose of the Jewish soul is 613 mitzvahs is much more extensive. And the Shekhinah is a different type of Shekhinah, just like we talked about. There's different aspects of God. God is everywhere, and everybody can access God. We're all part of God's creation. We're all created in the image of God. But the Shekhinah is going to be different when a Jewish person is performing a mitzvah. That's what the chapter is describing here.
Can a non-Jewish person do mitzvahs from the Jewish mitzvahs to make himself higher, like closer to God?
They can do the action, but the action is not going to accomplish the same thing. So, and this is kind of what we're talking about in this chapter, the power of the action. It's like a mechanism, like you're on an elevator and you're just the little toddler's pressing a button and doesn't have to know how the button works in order for it to work. That's like a body, right? Doing the mitzvahs, pressing the buttons without knowing how it works. Yet, if you're on a mock elevator, then you can press all the buttons you want and it won't go anywhere. So it has to actually be wired in the background to work. But if it is wired as such, then the operator doesn't have to know how it works. Doesn't have to appreciate it. You can go on an elevator without being an electrical engineer. But if you are an electrical engineer, and this is what the chapter takes us here, and if you are a tzaddik, if you are an electrical engineer and you do go into the elevator and you're like, wow, do you see what's going on here? Right? That's great for you. But does it make any difference if the elevator will go up or not? It makes no difference. The elevator will go up for the electrical engineer the same way the elevator goes up for the child.
I have to go to work, but what about Jews who don't perform mitzvahs?
That's why there are mitzvah tanks when yeshiva bachers that say, "Are you Jewish? Are you Jewish? Do you want to do a mitzvah? You want to do a mitzvah?" Because because the Chabad boys are educated with the Tanya, and they want every Jewish person to experience this, even if they have never been taught it, right? And that's why it's not about where you're going or what, it's not about, is it going to lead you to? That's not part of the conversation. It's just, let's harness this moment, right? So opportunity. Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Go ahead.
I'm wondering if, when you taught us about the contraction,
Yes, that's in this chapter too. Yes, you're on, but go on with your question.
when you talk about the Shekhinah coming in and having, and even though God is everywhere, is that because God's contracted?
Yes.
So God is everywhere but not
Felt.
overpowering us.
Yes.
So then we make some space for more God.
Yes, precisely. And that's going to be a perfect segue to next week when we talk about the world and what happens when we keep doing this, like the butterfly effect, right? We've got a spiritual one that we're going to learn about. And like when we do make space, it becomes cumulative, and really cool, amazing things have happened, could happen, and will happen, should happen. But I just want to just talk about the tzaddik for a minute, because that's a really powerful point. How cool is it? And this is why it's such a comfort. This is why it's called a double comfort. The Alter Rebbe says it's a double comfort. Why is this such a comfort? Because we're busy feeling a midlife crisis as a Beinoni, feeling like even if I was a Beinoni, then I would just still be spinning my wheels, right? Because I'm not even there yet, right? A tzaddik isn't getting any further than a Beinoni or even me, who isn't a Beinoni yet. A tzaddik is doing the same exact, is exact in the exact same playing field, in the same elevator that is, maybe they understand how the elevator works, but I have access to the same elevator they have. I can press the buttons the same way they can, whether or not I understand how it works, whether or not I'm appreciating or tuned in. And it's specifically because of the physical, unconscious aspect of the physical world that it can be a vessel and a conduit for such infinite light.
Can you say that again? Can you
Yeah.
unpack that?
I'm reviewing.
Okay.
I'm reviewing something we've unpacked. So don't get too confused and
Okay.
worry that it's something different.
Okay.
But it's specifically because the world is so unconscious of God. That's why it can be a nullified vessel for God's pure will to come through it in the physical, through physical action. So the mitzvahs are physical action, and that's why la'asoto, this matter that is near to you, it's all about the action. So the love of God and the fear of God is so wonderful, but the true reason why you're alive is through the physical actions that are so accessible to you and to me. If they're so accessible to humans, we're designed with physical bodies so that we can perform physical actions. And when we do those physical actions, we are setting off a chain reaction, a spiritual chain reaction that would blow the mind of a tzaddik. Blow the mind, right?
Can you give an example of mitzvahs as women that we can do on a daily basis besides bless on food or light the candles on Friday?
Sure. So there's a study called Sefer HaMitzvot. It's written by the Rambam, Maimonides, that every day is a few mitzvahs, so that we throughout the year we're learning all the 613. And the Rebbe was big into people doing that, studying that every day. It's really short. And I wonder if you'd be interested. I can print you. Maybe I'll send you a link.
Rochelea is studying.
Yes. Rachelea is mastering this. So she's not
That's
doing
so
it in a yearly
exciting.
cycle. She's doing it in a 5-year cycle because she's really mastering it. So every year it's like a international spelling bee every
so
year
cool.
so she's going to be doing her 3rd book next year.
Did you say Rambam?
Yes, the Rambam, famous Maimonides. So
Could we order some
copies?
and-
Absolutely. I have some already. I have to just find them where they are. But in the meantime, I'll send you guys a link for Rambam study, daily Rambam study. And I can actually renew I would like to renew an intention to get back into it myself, because that's something that I keep, you fall off and then you recommit. So it's a good time for me to recommit. But yeah, so we can go through the mitzvahs and see there all those opportunities. What are those mitzvahs? And it's not only the main mitzvahs. Anytime we do like an offshoot of that mitzvah, it's also part of it, because the way that I was studying recently, the way that the Torah is set up and designed, the oral Torah and the written Torah, is that all the teachings of the rabbis and the fences and all those applications are all they become part of the Torah. They get grandfathered in to part of aspects of a mitzvah. They're not additional mitzvahs, they're within the 613, but applications.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you can like swap something that's like similar to.
So, like for example, giving tzedakah.
Right. Like
there's so many ways to give tzedakah, and they're all tzedakah.
Right.
So there's giving somebody a job. There's obviously giving a little penny. The Rebbe was huge into like everybody giving a penny tzedakah every single day, and people ask him like, why can't they just give $100, every so often?
Mm-hmm.
That's more money. And the Rebbe says, yeah, but then you're not doing the mitzvah. Like it's the action. Mm-hmm. Every time you put that penny in, it's another action.
True.
Yeah.
Cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yes. And even though this isn't about us, and even though this isn't about us and what we're getting out of it, it's about, right? Yet, we're going to get a lot out of doing something every single day, because of that mechanism is rewiring positive pattern making, like you're saying.
And of course with that come more.
And exactly. So it's very wise very wise advice.
And I'm always blown away each time I learn how old this is. We all think psychology is a modern thing, but here these rabbis were basically doing the same thing, teaching.
And that's what boggles my mind as well. It's incredible.
Blown away.
Yeah. So tzedakah is a huge one. To get back to the question, because I think it's very important. What would be a better question than for a chapter that's talking about action, to talk about how we can do this action, right? So, Shabbat candles is once a week. Ahavat Yisrael, loving a fellow, is so pervasive in every part of our life. So anything we do that's loving to our fellow, is a mitzvah. Anything. It can be.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So anytime you're doing something kind, it's a mitzvah.
Including smiling at someone who is very tense. That was one of my mechanisms of trying to deal with the hatred of walking the streets in London. That I encountered. I would just meet the person, because we're related. We know she or he will look in my eyes, know I'm Jewish. I know they're not. I know we're related, and I would smile, and then it would be very interesting.
Ooh, what would happen next?
Most times, I would say, before 7:10 or 10:07 here, it would be good. But the shock, but that was good.
That's what you're going for.
Right. I'm shake it up a little bit.
Yeah.
It can't just be.
Yeah.
Right.
So minute things like just the upturn of a mouth.
When you meet that wall,
I smile.
and if they don't
That's a lot more powerful than
yes,
me.
of course. But how do you?
I don't.
You don't take it in.
I try my hardest. That's a very good question, but it's. Yeah. There are times when I was facing a demonstration in front of my house or in front of the synagogue, and it was menacing, and I would just turn my head, and I would smile and turn my head and keep walking.
That's the right thing to do.
Yeah, that's
Well,
very
it's
powerful.
effective because they feel hate, that's theirs, like it's not mine. I will continue being me and smile. If you want to hate me because I'm Jewish or because what happened in Israel or because Palestine, well, go ahead.
That's all fine. until it becomes a thing. I
No, it
was
happened to me
talking with
few
Leah.
times.
Yeah, you know Leah, Israeli.
Yes.
And her sister was attacked in London 2 weeks ago.
Oh, no.
Again. A,
That's
a
insane.
different sister.
Oh,
They
Different
fought
sister.
girls.
Oh,
They fought girls. Yeah, and
Oh my goodness.
very, and the cops did nothing.
No,
They
the
were
cops
right
will
there.
do nothing. They will really
They've
do
been
nothing.
told to stay out of it.
Mm.
So speaking of all the yucky and ugly that is going on, things that what this Tanya chapter is basically doing is putting the power, empowering us. What is in our hands? We can't necessarily change people's minds. We can't. I mean, we're this many in numbers, and there are this many in numbers. Their voice is much louder. We can do that. We can do the smiling, but even when we aren't, and this is also foreshadowed to next week. But even if we aren't in the same proximity as all that negative energy, every time we do something positive, we are bringing that energy of God into the world that has staying power. It's not fleeting; it stays. And that the mitzvahs, like we said, the 613. There's many. I also want to. There's the daily mitzvahs, like we said, kindness, and anytime we add a prayer, anytime we add a blessing over food, anytime we are studying Torah, which, by the way, a sub part of this chapter talks about how the physical mitzvahs are in a way greater than studying Torah, because studying Torah is all about the rationale, and the actions are more action-based, but still we're going to learn about how amazing studying Torah is a different time, so yeah. But
I study in Tanya, we're doing mitzvah.
oh yeah, we're studying Torah. This is Torah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Think about it.
Exactly.
I also want to talk about the seasonal mitzvahs.
Yes.
I feel called to talk about the seasonal mitzvahs. I don't know, even though we are in a regular day right now, but I also feel like the Rebbe's there's like huge discourses on each holiday and all the mitzvahs of that holiday. It's very exciting because those mitzvahs can only be done on that day of the year, and that's why there's so much, like, as Chabad, we're gonna put out like a huge party, and we're gonna try to get as many Jewish people as possible to come to the party so they can do the special mitzvah, right? Like, it's all about, like, because it's expiring. There's only one day, and it only happens once a year, and the next time is going to be next year, and next year's next year, right? So it's like when it comes to eating matzah on Passover, it's like, and there'll be like this, we have these little thin matzah boxes to give out to people that aren't going to make it to the Seder, right? Because it's the matzah, you got to eat the matzah, right? And, so the next one is like hearing the Saratat Dibrot on Shavuot. Like, everybody, we're going to hear, everybody come, hear them, because it's like, now or never, right? And then, of course, there's the other aspect of the daily mitzvahs, like not to be desensitized just because it's every day. It's just as special as if it were once in a year. So all of them are special in different ways. So I think it would be good for us to read what those mitzvahs are. And we actually have 613, but only a couple hundred of them are doable in this day and age, because a lot of them have to do with farming in Israel when we were all living in Israel in the times of the temple. A lot of them have to do with the sacrifices. But prayer actually is a substitute for sacrifices in these times. So that's another, good thing to know once before. It's disappointing, actually. Like, there's 630, but wait a minute, there's only like 200. And that's another reason why we're also working towards an era where we will be able to do all the mitzvahs again. With the, God willing, one day a third temple. May it be speedily in our days, as we say, B'mher b'yameinu.
Would we go back to sacrificing, or can we keep the prayer in its place?
It's a really good
Is it
conversation.
debated
I,
by the rabbis?
It's not debated, it's more discussed.
I mean discussion, debate.
Yes,
going back and forth.
in other words, we know that the simple understanding is that we will have them again. But the discussion is
In what
because,
format?
yes, because of what that means, and what that means
that
practically, and what it looks like, and it can be disturbing, and why, and so it gets a lot of discussion, which I think is out of the scope of this conversation.
Absolutely.
But yes, it's a big one. Now we might as well tune into the fact that we have access to a huge operation that was accomplishing an amazing thing, but we can accomplish kind of that through our prayers. So we can actually tune into that. You know?
Which suits the times we're in.
It really does.
Yes.
It really does, and it's more accessible by every single person.
And we need the prayers.
Yeah. Well, thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Mm-hmm.